If your reason for starting is truly for yourself, you won't need to announce it. No need to post about it, no need to tell others, no need to be seen, because anything that comes from a deep personal place is best protected by silence. Do you know why so many people keep talking but never act, keep rallying but never change? Because their reason isn't personal enough, not real enough, not deeply rooted within. They need someone else's validation before they can move forward. But if you're truly doing it for you, then the world's recognition becomes irrelevant. You can see this most clearly in people who've gone through deep pain. They don't speak up. They don't say, "I'm healing." They quietly change the way they live, the way they think, the way they choose. Because when you've been torn apart inside, you no longer need proof to show you're recovering. You just want peace. You just want to be whole again. And that healing doesn't need an audience. Don't confuse a personal journey with a performance. When you start needing someone to see, someone to hear, someone to praise, you've stepped off your true path. You start chasing the gaze of others instead of returning to your inner light. And the most dangerous part is you still think you're progressing when in fact, you've merely exchanged one form of dependency for another. You're no longer dependent on pain, you're dependent on recognition. But when you do something truly for yourself, you won't talk about it. You'll get up earlier without having to boast that you're changing. You'll eat healthier without needing to hashtag healthy. You'll walk away from old relationships without having to declare, "I've grown," because you know no one needs to hear that in order for you to live more truthfully. And more importantly, you don't need to hear it from yourself to know you're doing it right. Think back to all the times you've publicly declared something, a goal, a resolution, a big change, and then afterward you felt pressured to maintain that image, to live up to the words you said. You unknowingly built a new cage with your own words. But what happens if you stay silent? No one expects anything, no one interferes, no one controls. You're free to actually do it for you. And that kind of freedom is what truly sustains lasting transformation. You don't need to stay silent with everyone. But learn to distinguish between actions made for yourself and actions made to be noticed. Every time you're about to speak, pause and ask, am I saying this because I genuinely need to share, or because I'm afraid no one knows I'm trying? If it's the latter, hold it in, because the things you do for you will grow stronger when nurtured in silence. I know, there will be times when you feel alone, like no one understands, no one sees, no one supports you, but that too is the real test. Are you committed enough to yourself even when no one's watching? Can you keep going even without praise? Can you stay the course even when no one says you're doing great? Because once you can, you're no longer living according to your circumstances. You become a true creator, someone built from the inside out, unshakable from the outside in. I want you to understand this deeply. Your silence doesn't make your journey less valuable. On the contrary, it makes it sacred. A person rebuilding themselves in silence is dangerous in the most beautiful way, because no one can see their depth until they emerge in a completely transformed version. And by then, no words are needed. The results will speak for you. Let your silence become the ground where you plant new seeds without being pulled, watched, or judged. Cultivate your discipline in a space with no audience. Train in the dark, so that when the time comes to step forward, you don't need to perform, explain, or prove anything. You just need to show up, and that is enough. In the end, here's what I want you to remember clearly. You don't have to talk about what you're doing if it truly comes from your heart. Every step, every habit, every small change, if done for you, will nourish you from within. No one sees, no one applauds, no one knows, and that's perfectly okay. Because you don't live for others to know. You live so that you can live authentically. And if you live authentically, you won't need to say much. You'll let your actions speak. You'll let your energy transmit. You'll let your silence draw attention. Not because you're loud, but because you're grounded. Not because you speak well, but because you act truly. And that's what sets you apart. That's what makes you no longer need validation, because your very presence is already a declaration, a wordless proclamation. I did this for me. Imagine you're standing in front of a door. You're not sure whether it's open or not, but instead of hesitating, instead of waiting for someone to confirm, you place your hand on the knob, gently push, and step inside as if what lies beyond is the outcome you've long chosen. That's not delusion. That is the operational state of those who make history, acting as if success is already guaranteed, even in the absence of any evidence. This is not a fleeting kind of positive thinking. It's a trained neurological structure. It's how Henry Ford built the dream of a car for every household when everyone else called it a fantasy. How Thomas Edison kept experimenting through his 10,000th attempt, not because he was insane, but because he lived as though the light bulb already existed. How Andrew Carnegie expanded his steel empire, not through hesitation, but with certainty, radiating from every step he took. They never asked, is this possible? They acted as if it has already happened. I'm simply walking toward the meeting point between my mind and reality. Your behavior is always the map of your internal belief. If you doubt, your body delays, your voice weakens, your actions lack commitment. On the other hand, if you believe the result is guaranteed, every movement you make carries the energy of decisiveness, of clear direction, and of unwavering belief. When you act as if it's bound to happen, your brain begins searching for ways to validate that belief. You become more persistent, you read more, you're willing to learn from failure without being paralyzed by the feeling of, I'm not good enough. Because to you, it's all just part of a predetermined path. What makes the difference is not the circumstances, it's the belief system that governs behavior. Two people with the same talent and the same conditions. One waits until the signs are right before taking action, while the other moves forward even when nothing is certain. The latter will always arrive first. Because he isn't trapped in a backup mindset. He doesn't suspend his will on external proof. He understands it is decisive action that creates evidence, not the other way around. This mindset doesn't come from inspiration. It is built through disciplined choice. Every day of living, every small decision, radiating from a solid assumption that I will succeed simply because I've chosen to. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You only need to carry one thing in your nervous system: certainty. And from that state, you speak differently, move differently, endure more, recover faster, because you're not waiting for the world to validate you, you're commanding it to respond to you. If you truly look back, you'll see every moment you shined, every time you acted with clarity and effectiveness, it was when doubt no longer lingered. It was as if you had already decided. That certainty didn't come from your environment, it came from within. So why not deliberately generate it from the start? Why not live as though the outcome is already written into your destiny and you are simply the one carrying it out? This is not an easy formula to bypass reality. It is the only way to direct it. Because if you act as though this might not work, you'll create the very behavioral chain that leads to ambiguity, that leads to distortion. But if you act as though this is already happening, you'll do the things ordinary people won't. You'll call the meeting without knowing if anyone will agree. You'll launch the product before receiving any support. You'll stand up and share your idea when the room is silent. And those very actions, repeated, will become the evidence you were once waiting for. Acting as if success is already guaranteed is not self-deception. It is a consciously constructed mindset reinforced through repeated experience until your brain begins to believe, this is the version of me I need to serve. And from that moment on, your body, your mind, your nervous system, they all align with that signal. You no longer struggle to feel confident because you are operating from a deeper place, a place where the decision has already been made. And if this feels hard to believe, try a simple experiment. Choose one small action, but do it from the full state of as if it's already done. No hesitation, no excuses, no waiting for the right emotion. Just do it. with the energy of someone who has already succeeded. Then observe how you stand, how you speak, how you walk. It will be different, and how others respond to you will be different too, because you're no longer sending signals of waiting. You are broadcasting the presence of someone ready to receive. So choose one thing. Either you act as if you're trying, or you act as if it is inevitable. Only one of those two choices will change your destiny, and the one who chooses will always be you. There is a truth most people don't want to face. You cannot move forward with certainty while holding on to fear as a backup plan. These two mindsets cannot coexist. One will overpower the other. One will eventually kill the other. And it is you who decides which one survives longer in your nervous system. Fear always wears disguises: rational reasoning, realistic analysis, waiting for the right time, or the feeling of not being ready. But if you listen closely, you'll recognize it's always just one voice, and that voice has no intention of helping you soar. It has only one job: to keep you safe, but safety is not where you were meant to live forever. If you keep listening to it, you'll be imprisoned in a comfort zone you call preparation, and your life will become a long string of well-justified delays. Certainty, on the other hand, is different. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't have to scream to convince anyone. It is a deep state where you no longer need proof. You don't need others to agree. You don't need more advice, because you already know. Not all the answers, but you know for certain that you won't back down. And from that place, every action gains force. Every choice carries weight. Every step has direction. But the most dangerous place to live is between these two extremes. You say you believe in your dream, but you're secretly making plans to soften the blow if it fails. You claim you want success, but you keep habits designed for retreat. You move forward, but still glance back. You act, but never go all in. And because you're still clinging to a part of your old self, your new identity never fully takes shape. You cannot walk toward the sun while your eyes remain fixed on the shadows behind you. You cannot fly if you're still tethered to the ground. And you cannot become great if you leave little escape hatches for yourself every time things get hard. There comes a point where you must choose. Either you continue to fear or you commit fully. The middle is the land of fragmentation. The middle is where people stay almost there forever. Your mind is a sophisticated machine. It doesn't respond to the words you say once, but to the signals you repeat over and over. If you keep living in hesitation, your subconscious learns to hold back energy, never giving you full access to your decision-making power. If you act with 50% belief and 50% fear, your nervous system will constantly activate defense mechanisms, ensuring you never harness your full inner strength. But if you're decisive, if you stop negotiating with yourself and declare, "I've chosen, I'm going all the way," then something strange happens. Your entire inner system begins to align. You are no longer torn in half. You become a unified being. And from there you gain power. Think of a bridge that's broken in the middle. No matter how solid both ends are, you can't cross it. Your mindset is the same. If you have half belief and half doubt, your energy stream is severed. Nothing truly reaches its destination. Nothing is ever completed. You build a little, then destroy a little. You commit, then retreat. You act but don't believe, and that alone dissolves every result that was almost within reach. A person who lives with certainty isn't someone who doesn't feel fear. They simply don't let fear give the orders. They still feel pressure, but they don't back away. They don't need positive emotion to act. They act because they've redefined their identity. I'm the one who follows through. That's an internal command. A setting installed in the brain that is non-negotiable. If you're waiting to get clearer before acting, the truth is you'll never be clear. Not because you lack information, but because you're waiting for certainty to come from outside, when the only thing you truly need is a clear decision from within. You must tell your mind, we no longer live two lives. No more hesitation, no more keeping exit routes. This is the only way forward. And repeat that long enough until your body understands. You truly mean it. You cannot serve two mindsets. One must die, and you already know which one it has to be. Fear is not you. It is only the echo of old experiences, of times you were betrayed, of unresolved failures from the past. But you don't need to carry them forever. You cannot bring old baggage and demand a new life. At some point, you must choose. Either you cling to your wounds, or you move toward your power. So choose. Not next week, not when conditions are better. Right now. Because every minute you remain split in two is a minute you lose real momentum. And the truth is, the world won't wait for you. Opportunities don't circle back. But certainty, when repeated, creates gravity. It makes others believe in you. It turns events in your favor. It forces the environment to respond as if you were right from the beginning. And you will be right if you dare to choose. Dare to commit, dare to kill the fragmentation, so that from now on, only one thing remains within you, the mindset of certainty. Have you ever wondered, what if the very things you hate, the unexpected detours, the delayed dreams, are actually gifts in disguise? What if failure isn't the end, but a shortcut? And what if everything, even the parts you most want to avoid, is being meticulously arranged to serve a stronger version of you? We're taught that success comes from clear plans, steady progress, and expected outcomes. But real life doesn't operate like a linear graph. It's a sequence of unexpected events where straight lines are rare. And the issue doesn't lie in the curve of the path, but in how you interpret the meaning of each bend. Most people respond to failure as if it's rejection. They see silence as the universe whispering, "Don't go further." They view delay as proof that I'm not worthy. They experience betrayal and take it as a reason to shut down, pull back, and lower their expectations of life. But what if all of it, every pain, every tear, every moment of feeling lost, was deliberately planted as a necessary part of your transformation? What if the delay wasn't because you're not good enough, but because your current version isn't yet strong enough to hold the magnitude of what you're praying for? What if betrayal wasn't an attack, but protection? A quiet way the universe removes people who no longer align with the vision you're meant to pursue. What if exhaustion isn't failure, but a necessary pause so you can look inward and face the parts of yourself you've long ignored? You may not be able to control the process, but you always control the meaning you assign to experience. And that meaning, not the circumstance, is what determines whether you move forward or remain stuck. When you begin to believe that everything is serving you, even in pain, you no longer need the universe to obey your script. You just need to hold one truth. I will not leave this path. One way or another, I'm going forward. This is not a philosophy of avoiding reality. On the contrary, it is a way of approaching reality with an inner power that is not softened by fear. Because if you only believe when everything goes your way, then your belief isn't a strength, it's a fragile reward. But if you believe that even the chaos, even the moments that feel like disorientation are part of a greater design, then you will stay calm in the storm, keep walking when others quit, and achieve results not because you're luckier, but because you interpret differently. You can see proof of this everywhere. The people who changed the world weren't those who had easy lives. They were those who hit rock bottom, but didn't place a period there. They were rejected, mocked, isolated, but they kept walking because they believed all of this is preparing me for what I was born to fulfill. Now look at yourself. How many times did you feel like you had collapsed, like everything had fallen apart, only to be redirected to a better path, a deeper awareness, a more authentic connection? And if that happened before, why wouldn't you believe it's happening again, right now? Even if you can't yet see the whole picture, one of the most powerful abilities you can develop is the ability to reinterpret failure as a necessary part of transformation, not by denying the pain, but by assigning it a more valuable role than mistake. Because in truth, there is no misstep if it wakes you up, matures you, and restructures the person you are becoming. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what part of me is this experience strengthening? Instead of asking, how do I get out of this? Ask, who am I being called to become through this experience? And if you're brave enough to step into that answer, you'll realize that everything, even failure, is happening for you from the moment you change the lens. You'll see the road is still the same, but the person walking it is not. You'll stop resisting and start cooperating with the process. You'll stop avoiding the lesson and begin embracing the role of an intentional student. You'll stop trying to quickly retreat to your comfort zone and begin marching toward the version of you once only dreamed about. And at some point, you'll look back on the things that once scared you and silently thank them, not because you enjoy pain, but because it was pain that forged you into someone capable of carrying a greater dream. And in that moment, you'll understand more deeply than ever before, everything truly is happening for you. Don't confuse faith with fleeting emotions. Real belief doesn't arrive when you feel positive, when everything is easy, or when someone cheers you on to rise. Faith is a conscious decision, a repeated mental action, practiced until it becomes habit, even when you feel uninspired, even when you're facing chaos. And because it is a choice, you have the power to reset it at any moment, regardless of your circumstances. You were taught early on that belief is a reaction. If someone loves you, you'll believe. If you succeed a few times, you'll believe. If the environment is favorable, you'll believe. But this model of operation puts you in a passive role. When faith is dependent on external conditions, you live as a puppet to emotions. And when emotions crash, your entire inner system shuts down with them. You lose direction, lose motivation, lose willpower. But you weren't born to be swayed by those rising and falling waves. You were given a higher faculty, the power to choose what you want to reprogram in your brain, and belief is where it begins, because the nervous system cannot distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. It simply responds to whatever is repeated often enough. When you keep saying, I'm not sure, I don't know if I can do it, I'll wait for a clearer sign, your subconscious doesn't argue, it accepts. And slowly, every behavior, every decision, every reflex begins to align with that assumption, I can't. Conversely, if you begin repeating a different statement, a different signal, a new mental state, like I am capable, I'm building this day by day, I don't see the result yet, but I trust the process. The subconscious, again, doesn't need evidence. It accepts. And over time, you'll find yourself acting differently. You'll hesitate less. You'll start doing things you used to avoid, not because you've suddenly become extraordinary, but because your internal structure has been rewritten. Belief is the software that governs the hardware, and you can't run a new operating system with remnants of old code. That's why autosuggestion isn't something to take lightly. It's not a psychological trick, nor some vague mental therapy. It's a technique for rewriting yourself, one sentence, one repetition, one small daily decision at a time, until your nervous system accepts, this is the new me, this is the real me. Successful people don't wait for inspiration to believe. They choose belief and let inspiration arrive from the results that belief produces. You can begin like them. You don't need to see the whole picture. You just need to dare to choose a new assumption. I believe, not because I have proof, but because I want to act like someone who believes. That single change is enough to shake your entire behavioral chain. And you'll see every time you act without full clarity, every time you follow through on your commitment, every morning you wake up and repeat a powerful affirmation instead of unconscious complaints, you are reinforcing the house of belief within you. Every brick is a behavior, every behavior is evidence, and after enough days, you won't need to try to believe anymore because you will have become someone with belief through the way you chose to live. A weak mindset asks, how can I believe if I don't feel anything? But a strong one answers, I believe, and the emotion will follow. This agency not only makes you stronger, it frees you from dependence on your environment. You don't need the world's reassurance. You don't need everyone's agreement. You don't need temporary success to validate your worth. You have belief, and it comes from decision, not circumstance. And if you've ever thought you're not strong enough to believe, remember, you're already believing in something. If not success, then failure. If not potential, then danger. If not ability, then doubt. You are always believing. The only question is, what are you choosing to believe in? From today, choose again, choose a new signal, repeat a new structure, not to temporarily feel better, but to permanently change your inner trajectory. Belief doesn't come as a gift from the sky. It's the result of standing up, taking action, keeping your word, and speaking what you're building, even when no one else sees it. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to choose once and repeat it enough times that your brain has no choice but to believe you're serious. And from that moment, you don't just live with faith, you become faith. If you wait to see proof before you act, you're already late. Not late in the eyes of the world, but late to your own mission. Because evidence only appears after you commit, after you move forward through the fog. Every great achievement in history began not with certainty from the environment, but with the consistency of an individual who acted before there was any sign they were right. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light because he saw the result in advance. He acted as if it already existed. 1,000 failures, then 2,000, then 10,000, and he still tried again. Not because he was promised anything, but because he had installed a command in his mind, I will not back down. That wasn't inspiration, that was discipline. And it was that discipline that transformed an ordinary man into an irreplaceable icon. Most people act when they feel confident, when someone supports them, when results seem within reach. But legends are different. They act when there is nothing visible. They don't need a light at the end of the tunnel to begin walking. They generate that light through each step, each choice, each repeated commitment, regardless of emotion. They don't chase favorable conditions. They build process out of chaos. And that doesn't come from talent. It comes from uncompromising self-discipline. Evidence always lags behind action. If you wait for the market to confirm, you'll always be behind. If you wait for others to acknowledge you, you'll always be dependent. If you wait to feel fully ready before you begin, you may never begin at all. But if you act as though everything is already guaranteed, then you become the first to shape that evidence. Not because you're reckless, but because you understand this principle. The world doesn't respond to hope. It responds to behavioral signals. Signals of commitment, of someone who has crossed off every exit, of a mind no longer waiting for more data, but creating the data with every step forward. Edison once said, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Think about it. How many people stopped at attempt number 3? How many had the same dream, but not the same discipline? Discipline isn't a weapon reserved for the military or elite athletes. It is a survival skill for anyone who wants to build something beyond the reach of their present reality. It's the ability to show up on time even when no one is waiting, to practice even when there's no stage, to keep your word to yourself even when the world doesn't know you're trying. Discipline is the quiet dialogue between you and the future you're creating. And because discipline doesn't require emotion to function, it is more sustainable than inspiration. Inspiration is a gift. Discipline is a decision. You can't control when inspiration will come. but you can always control whether you show up. And every time you show up, without demanding conditions, you are reinforcing your identity. I am someone who acts. Without needing to see first. Great people aren't always right, but they always show up. They show up to train even when it rains. They send the 101st email when the first 100 were ignored. They lay the next layer of foundation even when no one believes in their structure yet. And at some point, they cross the threshold because the world cannot ignore someone who never stops sending signals of action. And what are you waiting for to begin? A person to validate you, a favorable condition, a good enough sign. All of those things may never come unless you are the first to act. And if you dare to do that, you won't just change your present. You'll change the structure of your nervous system. You'll no longer live as someone who is trying. You'll begin to live as someone who is chosen. And from that moment on, you'll no longer fear failure because you'll understand that each action is a necessary part of the process. You'll no longer see silence as rejection, but as the space required to prove whether you are resilient. You'll no longer worry about being right or wrong. You'll focus on doing what is right for the version of yourself you're pursuing. To act before the evidence isn't recklessness, it's the peak of inner freedom. And discipline isn't a shackle. It's the bridge that carries you across the fog of potential into the only place that's real, results. No sustainable fire is ever sparked from vagueness. You can try so hard that you burn yourself out, pour in effort until there's no time left for yourself. But if you don't know exactly what you're aiming for, everything you do becomes aimless motion, and that kills the spirit faster than any failure ever could. In an increasingly chaotic world, clarity is a kind of superpower. A goal is not just something you want to achieve. A goal is the internal structure that shapes every choice, every reaction, even how you endure pain. Imagine waking up each morning with a pre-installed identity. What am I building? Why does it matter? And what price am I willing to pay? If you can't immediately answer those three questions, then everything you do is vulnerable to dispersion. You'll get swept away by other people's demands. You'll react instead of initiating. You'll be persuaded by trivial things simply because you haven't defined what truly matters. Without a clear goal, you become a victim of distraction. And that's why so many talented people never create impact, because they constantly shift directions. They try one thing after another. They start strong but quit when the excitement fades. Not because they lack ability, but because they never stopped long enough to establish one thing. Why am I here, and what am I here to do, with conviction? Until you can write that sentence in clear, compelling language, you'll stay stuck in the loop of almost, maybe there, maybe soon. A clear goal is not a long list of things you want. It's not a vision board on your wall or a feel-good status update. A clear goal is a single sentence with weight that lives in your spine every day. It shapes how you respond to rejection. It determines whether you rise after a fall or give up the dream entirely. It chooses for you what's worth pursuing and what must be let go of without hesitation. And most importantly, it gives no room for doubt to survive. Look at anyone who has changed history, from Abraham Lincoln to Henry Ford. You'll never find them vague about their mission. They didn't need daily inspiration. They had goals etched into their nervous systems. Lincoln didn't fight a civil war out of personal emotion. He acted from a principle he deemed non-negotiable. Freedom is the sacred default of humanity. Ford didn't just want wealth. He wanted to change how the world moved. Edison didn't just want to invent. He wanted to bring light into every home. These were living declarations, unshakable by opposition, unbroken by setbacks. And have you written your sentence yet? Just one? Nothing complex, but it must make you feel, if I don't live by this, I will regret it. That sentence doesn't come from your mind. It comes from the deepest part of you, where intuition and commitment meet. And once you have it, you won't need to force yourself into action. Every behavior, every habit, every decision will begin to naturally align with that goal. A strong vision creates discipline without struggle. A clear goal is the foundation of mental stability. When you're tired, it reminds you to keep going. When you're doubted, it reminds you who started. When you're tempted by ease, it anchors you to what matters. It's not a detailed map, it's a compass. You'll still need to learn, still need to adjust, still need to change strategies, but you'll never lose direction. Every productivity system, every efficient habit, every display of professionalism becomes meaningless if not tied to a core goal. And if you're feeling overwhelmed yet under-accomplished, chances are you're missing the one thing that cannot be replaced: a clear goal. It's what will stop you from demanding more time and start demanding more focus from yourself. It will stop you from chasing too many things and begin your journey of chasing one thing to the end. Write your sentence down. Don't keep it in your head. Post it where you can see it every morning. Read it out loud. Rewrite it each night. Create a ritual. Turn that sentence into the neural pathway behind all your behaviors, because you're not just aiming at a goal. You're becoming someone who lives with direction. And that is the first step toward building a transformation that cannot be undone. People often say, "I'll start when I have faith." But that very sentence is the trap that keeps millions forever outside their dreams, because they wait for faith as if waiting for a gift from the sky, as if simply sitting still and waiting for inspiration is enough to begin. But no one tells them this truth. Faith doesn't fall down, it is forged. And like any muscle in the body, faith grows through only one formula: pressure and repetition. Imagine you go to the gym. You can't go once, lift a light weight, and expect to have muscle. Just as you can't read one inspirational quote and expect your mindset to change forever. Muscle is built through tension when you do what feels heavy. And so is faith. It is created not when everything is going well, but when you move forward amid doubt. When you keep your promises to yourself on days no one sees, no one knows, and no one cheers you on. Every time you act without guarantees, every time you continue when the outcome is unclear, every time you stay the course without applause, that's when you are training your faith muscle. And the miracle is this: the more you act within uncertainty, the stronger your faith becomes. Not because you're blindly optimistic, but because you've proven to yourself that you don't need evidence in order to commit. Thomas Edison had no blueprint for invention. He had no shortcut, no guaranteed formula. He had only one thing: faith repeated every day, through every failure, through every dark night when no one understood what he was trying so hard to achieve. But as you can see, he didn't succeed because he waited for faith. He succeeded because he acted like someone who already had it. And that very action was the workout that made faith an embedded part of his nervous system. You can begin just like him. You don't need to feel right. You only need to do what is right repeatedly until your mind has no choice but to believe you're serious. Because your mind doesn't respond to truth. It responds to repeated signals. You may not be skilled yet, but if you repeat enough, you'll become skilled. You may not believe powerfully yet, but if you act like someone with faith day after day, at some point, you won't need to force it anymore. You'll be that person. And just like physical training, you'll face days of fatigue, boredom, and wanting to quit. Those are the most important days, because faith doesn't grow in comfort. It is forged in the very moment you feel weak. But choose not to give up when you repeat what you've chosen instead of what you feel. When you let willpower lead instead of emotion. When you place a command in your mind: I do not run my life based on comfort. I run it based on what I've decided is right. And if you look back, you'll see anything you've ever accomplished, every time you broke through limits, every time you faced what scared you, came from a series of small actions you repeated without needing an audience. Likewise, faith does not come from a sleepless night of inspired thinking. It comes from keeping your word to yourself in silence, consistently, with discipline, day So don't wait for faith. Build it. Start with something very small, a strong affirmation you repeat every morning, a daily action you complete without being reminded, a commitment you don't break even when there's no immediate reward. Bit by bit, you're bending doubt. Bit by bit, you're reinforcing the identity, I am someone I can trust. And in that state, you won't need others to motivate you. You won't need external encouragement. You won't need life to be gentle with you because you'll carry faith like an invisible muscle. And the most extraordinary thing is this. Once that muscle is strong enough, everything you touch begins to change. Not because you're forcing life, but because you make it believe you will not stop. Hesitation is not a personality trait, it's a habit. And like any habit, if you nurture it long enough, it quietly becomes your identity. You'll stop noticing that you're hesitating. You'll call it by more elegant names. I'm evaluating. I need more information. I'm waiting for the right timing. But behind it all, only one thing is operating. You're leaving an escape route. And until you burn it completely, your life will keep circling around unfinished beginning. Every breakthrough starts with a decisive commitment, not just to move forward, but to eliminate the possibility of turning back. No staircase for retreat, no exit door when things get hard, no maybe I'll try again later. Because as long as you keep the option to reverse, you'll live as if you can back out at any moment. And your mind, your body, your energy, they will all hold back a portion, never going all in. You cannot go all the way while still carrying the whisper, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back to the old way. That sentence is a mental anesthetic. It slows you down, makes you doubt yourself, and causes you to live a life controlled by imagined contingencies instead of a defined purpose. Those who changed history didn't do so because they knew they'd succeed, but because they gave themselves no alternative. They placed themselves in a state where there was only one direction, forward, not out of blind recklessness, but from a clear understanding that if I keep every exit open, I will never live fully in what I've chosen. And that half-lived existence is the silent enemy of all potential. Burning the escape route doesn't mean acting carelessly. It means you've considered, researched, waited long enough, and now it's time to act like someone who's decided. It's the moment you delete the contact that always pulled you back to safety. The moment you let go of the old job that no longer serves your new vision. The moment you tell the world and yourself that you are not turning back. You'll see this in every legend. Charles Schwab, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford. They didn't keep a plan B. They didn't build with a fallback, like, if I fail, I'll just go back to what I used to do. They acted as if the only door was the one they had chosen. And because they closed every exit, their energy converged, and the world had no choice but to respond. And you, what are you doing that you haven't fully committed to? What decision have you been circling for months, but haven't severed ties with the old? What are you still holding on to, not because it serves you, but because it makes failure feel safer? Look straight at it, name it, and then burn it, not with physical fire, but with a definitive affirmation. I no longer live the old way. I'm not going back. This is the only path. From that moment on, hesitation will no longer be a reflex. It will become a memory, a part of you that once existed, but no longer controls you. And you'll be amazed at the surge in your energy, because a mind no longer split is a sharp mind. A heart no longer holding on to the past is a heart ready to love the future. A body no longer serving two identities is a body capable of transformation. No one ever became great while leaving the back door open. No one ever changed their destiny while still keeping a way out. If you want something extraordinary, you must live as though this is the only choice allowed to exist. And when you do that, you don't just create motivation, you create a kind of freedom reserved only for those who have commanded themselves. I will live from the best part of me, with no permission, no delay, no negotiation with fear. No one becomes great alone. Don't be fooled by the stories of solo success. Every exceptional individual is uplifted not by the crowd, but by a carefully chosen mental ecosystem, where every conversation, every piece of feedback, even every silence carries directional energy. This is what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind, an alliance of minds, a convergence of aligned frequencies that amplify, challenge, and elevate one another. You are the average of the minds you connect with most frequently. No matter how hard you're trying, if you're surrounded by people who speak negatively, live in fear, and justify procrastination, your discipline will slowly be eroded. Not because you're weak, but because mental environments have gravity. And you can't soar if you're tethered to those who've never left the ground. On the other hand, if you have a companion who dares to look you in the eye and ask, is this truly serving your vision? You'll wake up. If you have a friend who texts you just as you're about to give up and reminds you why you began, you'll rise. If you step into a meeting where people speak in the language of vision, of action, of identity, you'll feel unable to hide from growth because seriousness is contagious. A mastermind is not a circle of best friends. It's not a noisy group chat on social media. It is a disciplined mental structure where each person commits to themselves and to one another. I will not let you remain a lesser version of who you are, a space where mediocrity is not permitted, not because someone is forcing you, but because you refuse to betray the trust of the system. Henry Ford didn't build his empire alone. He surrounded himself with engineers, thinkers, people who dared to challenge him at the right time and support him in the right way. Thomas Edison had a collaborative network where ideas collided, reducing testing time and elevating standards. Andrew Carnegie once said he wasn't wealthy because he was the best, but because he knew how to choose the right people to walk with him. This wasn't just a business strategy, it was a growth principle, and you need it too. Not when you have a position, not when you've built a boardroom. Just one aligned mind is enough. One person who speaks with integrity, lives with intention, acts with discipline, and you've laid your first foundation. From one comes two. From two, a group. From that group, a culture. And from that culture, a standard of living that cannot be undone. Ask yourself, who's speaking into your life each week? Who's challenging you to go further? Who keeps reminding you to live up to the declaration you once wrote down? If the answer is no one, it's not because you're unlucky, it's because you haven't taken responsibility to build your own mastermind. Because powerful minds don't randomly appear in your life. They are drawn by the consistency and depth you radiate. You can't expect an elite circle while still negotiating with procrastination. So begin by becoming the first one, the first to speak with clarity, the first to keep their word, the first to act without applause. Then quietly observe who's drawn in, who responds, who sustains that frequency. Those people are the nucleus, the raw material from which you'll build an unshakable structure, a small but deep community, few in number but high in quality, quiet but formidable, because they don't need to speak loudly to prove anything. And once you have a mastermind, don't treat it as a luxury. Treat it as strategic fuel. Set meetings, share goals, check progress, ask each other the hard questions, and above all, hold one another in a space of uncompromising standards. Because when you live in an environment where everyone is serious about themselves, you'll have no excuse to justify anything halfway. You will be pulled upward, or you'll fall away. Life does not reward the lone wolf. It rewards those who choose the right allies. And on the journey toward becoming your most excellent self, going alone is not a strategy, it's a liability. But alignment, that's leverage. So build your mastermind. Don't wait. Start with the first person, yourself. There is a law that operates silently, but as precisely as gravity. You are never rewarded before you give, not because the world is harsh, but because results are a consequence, not a reward. And if you understand this deeply, you'll stop waiting for outcomes to begin and instead begin immediately with the mindset of someone who knows, I must sow first, then I may reap. Most people act as if they are negotiating with life. They do a little, then pause to see the reaction. They give conditionally. They ask themselves, have I done enough to be rewarded? But in every major system, finance, achievement, skill, there is no room for that kind of thinking. Because the law of compensation doesn't measure your initial enthusiasm. It only responds to giving that is unconditional, sustained, and real. You can work hard, but if you only do just enough, you'll receive average returns. If you only show up when someone's watching, only try when there's prize, only perform when you're praised, then you're living reactively, not with purpose. And reactive people are shaped by their environment, but those who live by mission, they don't need encouragement. They are the source of it. Look at those who created breakthroughs. They didn't demand payment in advance. They acted as if reward was inevitable because they had already gone far beyond deserving. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, but he made it accessible to the masses because he dared to go further than anyone else, streamlining the process, accelerating production, lowering costs, and he did it not for applause, but because that was the standard he held himself to. Charles M. Schwab was paid the highest salary in steel industry history by Andrew Carnegie, not because he was the best technical expert, but because he gave more than anyone else. His time, his vision, his ability to inspire, his power to organize. He didn't act like an employee. He acted as if the company were his own. And the world, according to the law of compensation, could not ignore a man like that. You can be the same. You may start very small, very quietly, but even in the places where no one is watching, your actions are being recorded by your subconscious, by your habits, and by the invisible laws of value. Every time you go beyond what is asked, you're planting a seed. Every time you persist without recognition, you're laying another layer of foundation. Every time you fix a detail no one will check, you're sending a signal. I'm not here to be acknowledged. I'm here to create something worthy of acknowledgement. The world always responds more slowly than you want, but it never responds incorrectly. And if you remain consistent in action, even in silence, even when the result is still far away, the reward will come not in a dramatic burst, but as an inevitability. You don't need to pray for luck. You just need to live as if the law of compensation cannot fail. Act as if the value you create today will return to you tenfold. Not because you're wishful, but because that's how the universe balanced. If you truly believe that every ounce of value you create is recorded, even if not instantly, you will act differently. You won't need to be monitored to give effort. You won't work just to pass inspection. You won't wait to be inspired. You act because that's who you are. And then a moment will come when everything starts to come back. The people who once ignored you will seek you out. The doors that were once closed will open. The things you once labeled hopeless will begin to move, not because you changed direction, but because you went deep and long enough to trigger the natural consequence. Value never disappears. So don't ask, what will I get if I do this? Ask, what will happen if I do this better than anyone else? Don't wait for compliments to get serious. Be so serious that compliments become irrelevant. Don't do just enough to get it done. Do so much that no one can overlook you anymore. Because in a world of people who only give when there's a contract, the one who dares to act unconditionally will always be the one who cannot be replaced. Your brain doesn't respond to what you say once. It responds to what you say over and over. It's not truth that wins. It's whatever gets repeated the most that wins. And if you don't deliberately repeat positive signals, intentional beliefs, and the mental images you want to live out, then the negative noise from the outside will occupy your nervous system without asking for permission. You can't repeat fear every morning and expect courage to show up. You can't retell stories of past failure every day and hope the future will shine. You can't breathe through anxiety and expect your body to respond with calm. Every time you repeat a thought, even in silence, you're sending a signal to your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making, planning, and action. And if that signal is conflicted, negative, or inconsistent, then your entire mental operating system will become misaligned. Let me remind you of something that seems simple, but few people live by. Thought is a system that can be programmed, and language is the most powerful coding tool. Every day you speak one sentence to yourself, at the right time, in the right way, with the right emotional depth. You are engraving a new command onto the neural map of your brain. At first it's sound, then it becomes reflex, eventually it becomes reality. Successful people don't wait for inspiration. They install intentional repetition systems. They understand that motivation is the result, not the starting point. They rewrite their affirmations every morning. They visualize their goals during meditation. They reread their vision in moments of pressure. And not because they're superstitious, but because they know the brain must be trained, not persuaded. You can start with a single sentence, I am ready. But don't say it like a hollow prayer. Say it like a command, like an instruction to your entire nervous system. Stand upright, open your shoulders, breathe deeply, and let every syllable pass through your diaphragm, your voice, your eyes. Let your body hear it, because the brain trusts action more than words. And if you walk as though you're not ready, the brain will interpret we're anxious. But if you walk as though everything is in place, then even if you're not ready, the brain will mobilize every resource to make you ready. A martial artist doesn't wait until the day of battle to practice breathing. They repeat every small move, not because it's new, but because each repetition optimizes their nervous system one layer further. And a person who lives steadily through life doesn't wait for confidence to appear. They act while trembling, but with each repeated act of courage, they engrave a new identity. I am someone who doesn't need certainty to begin. I just need to begin, and certainty will follow. Repetition is how you reestablish internal order, how you shorten your response time, how you install confidence as a native language. And then you'll notice there are people who don't speak much, but when they walk into a room, there's a presence about them. They don't explain, they don't rush, they don't ask for permission, because they've already lived what they're about to express countless times in their minds. They're not trying, they've repeated it until they became it. And you can be the same, not by reading hundreds of books, but by choosing a single idea and repeating it until it's no longer a phrase, but a reaction. Don't ask whether you're good enough today. Ask, what did I repeat correctly today? Live as if everything is ready, not because you're 100% certain, but because certainty is being forged daily through consistent behavior. Don't wait for the world to validate you. Don't wait for the perfect environment. Step first. Act first. Repeat first. And let the rest be handled by your nervous system.